Leadership and Yoga fam. Today I'm excited to introduce you to Amy Newmark. She is an inspiring and highly accomplished figure in the world of publishing and storytelling. And as the author, editor in chief, and publisher of the iconic Chicken Soup for the Soul book series, she has brought over 190 titles and countless stories of hope on transformation and heartwarming connection from people all around the world. And if you're not familiar with the concept of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, they're books that I grew up with, but they are basically collections of stories from people that are true and quite inspiring. Before we get into the episode today, if you are listening, I have a quick ask. If you would take a moment to please make sure that you drop me a rating for this show and also that you subscribe to my podcast. That's currently the only form of support that I ask for in return for being able to bring you wonderful conversations like this one with Amy. So take a moment to subscribe to my show, drop me a rating, and also to share this episode with a friend as well. All right, let's get into the episode. Amy, welcome to the Leadership and Yoga podcast. It is surreal to sit here with you. I'm really excited to talk to you about your story and also all things Chicken Soup for the Soul because it's funny, I was realizing it was actually back in 2008 when I was in about, I think, fifth grade or sixth grade. And during silent reading time, I picked up for the first time a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. And that was the first of many that I ended up reading. And really kind of one of the first times in my life that I felt a permission to feel my feelings. And I realized the power of stories. You know, I was just captivated by the whole concept, and I've really been captivated ever since. So welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear from you today.
Yeah, I think stories are really mankind's best way of sharing advice and wisdom and culture and support and all of those things. Because, if you read like normal self-help books or whatever, like they have lists you have to fill in, or you have to do assignments in a journal, or you have to read all these bullet points. And I think people are affected way more efficiently, really, by reading other people's stories. And what we do is we gather up 101 stories on a specific topic, and then you're bound to find, 10 or 20 of them in a book of 101 that will really resonate with you. And it makes such a difference. And I have read that Chicken Soup for the Girl Soul. I do have to say it was put together probably, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, or maybe even longer ago. And when I look at it now, I'm like, some of those stories are a little mature for, a fifth grader who you were when you read it. And so we're a little more careful now, but it's because we have a much greater ability now to collect stories because of getting submissions over the internet. They didn't have as much to choose from back in the old days. So I feel even more comfortable now with our offerings for preteens and teens today, even though I know those old books are still very popular.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that. I'm sure you guys have a lot more submissions nowadays than you did back in the day when people were mailing in their stories, I assume. But I still loved it. Of course I haven't picked up the book in years, so maybe the older version of me would also be like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize the intensity of the stories." But I really remember it as being something that marked kind of like a before and after for me in my reading, learning to actually enjoy reading, because a lot of the things we had to read in school, it felt more dry, and the stories really bring things to life. So I was curious, when is the first time that you really realized just the power of stories? Where does your interest in human stories come from?
Well, I've always been a huge reader, even as a child. I mean, I would be reading like a book a day, even when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just so into reading. And that was my favorite activity. Still is, basically. I think I realized the power of storytelling when I was 20, and I went to Brazil to do a semester abroad when I was in college. And I was studying this form of popular poetry in this really poor section of Brazil in the Northeast, where like they had never seen somebody with blonde hair or blue eyes before, and they
Yeah.
thought I was some kind of alien creature. And anyway, I was studying these poets who tended to be, it was very homegrown poetry. A lot of them were quite poor. And I would like wander around meeting them. I wandered all over the Northeast of Brazil, kind of dumb. I was 20, stuck out like amazingly, and nothing bad ever happened to me. But now I think about it, it's kind of horrifying. It's good my parents didn't really understand what I was doing. But I started going around and interviewing all these poets about their own lives, and collecting their stories. And then when I did my thesis in college about this form of poetry, my thesis really was mostly about the individual stories of these people. And one thing I always did to get a sense of their hopes and dreams was I would say to them, what would you do if you won the lottery? The lottery was a really big deal among all of
Yeah.
them. And that's when I would really get inside them to find out, what they would do if they won the lottery. And for them, I mean, it was something really simple, like I would buy my own little cottage. Like that was like the dream,
Yeah.
not like some Americans now who were like, I would buy a plane or something,
Yeah.
But I think that was the beginning. And then my first exposure to Chicken Soup for the Soul was, I think I was like in my late 30s. So basically, almost 20 years later, and I was getting a divorce. And my friend who had already gotten divorced, like rushed over with 3 books for me. And one of them was the original Chicken Soup for the Soul, which was fairly new at that time.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that, and then I never really thought about Chicken Soup for the Soul again. And then we bought the company in 2008. My husband and his business partner bought the company from Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, who had started
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And at that point, I sat down. This was 2007 was when we were working on the deal. And I read 100 of the old Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I spent months reading 100 of them. And I remember my 2-week contact lenses got salty because, I'd be laughing, then I'd be crying,
Yes.
I was feeling all the emotions, and I had to change my contacts every week instead
Oh
of
my
every
gosh.
2 weeks because they were just getting salty. And, and I read these, so 100 books, so it was basically, like reading 10,000 stories. And it's all I did for months. I just sat there and read these books. And it had such an effect on me. And I realized this is what I'm going to do. I am going to kind of reinvigorate this line of books and bring them more into the modern age. And I had all these topic ideas. And then that was 18 years ago. Over the following years, I got better and better at doing this and even more aware of the awesome power of the stories.
Yeah.
People come to us and they're like, I needed hope and you gave me hope. Or
Yeah.
I felt so alone and now I don't feel so alone. Just making people feel they're not alone and giving them hope is huge. It's a huge gift
huge.
to the readers.
So basically, if you're listening, so we can give kind of a little bit of a summary of your story. You went to Harvard, correct?
I did, and that's where I majored
And
in
you
Portuguese
majored in
and did that
Portuguese,
research
ended up in Brazil,
Yeah.
collecting stories of the people. And
Yeah.
then you had about a 3-decade long career on Wall Street. And then you came back to stories. Well, you went through tech and telecommunications, but then you came back to the stories essentially. Is that right?
I did. At
Okay.
50, my younger child went off to college, and so I became an empty nester because I really worked mostly part-time during, the 20 years I was raising my 2 kids, and then but still in telecom and tech and Wall Street and all of that. And I was on the boards of a bunch of technology companies and did a lot of like high level business stuff, but secretly it was only part time. but
Yeah,
people didn't have to know that. I could go to a cocktail party and
definitely not.
stand there and be like, yes, I'm on these boards and I do
Yeah.
this and I do that. But honestly, I was also like the class mother every single year for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, yeah, so I went back to work at age 50. Never thought I would still be doing this, 18 years later. It's crazy. But it was kind of nice because on Wall Street, you're dealing with basically two emotions, like fear and greed, which are
Mm,
very powerful emotions. But now I get to deal with all the emotions. And it's like everything I ever did kind of led up to this. And this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done.
mm.
And I know that I have helped so many people because we get the mail and we
Yeah.
find out the incredible impact that
Yeah.
these books, or even one story in a book, the impact that these things have on people.
Yeah. Or you have podcasters asking to interview you because they, found the books and have read them across the years as well. So I completely agree. What a meaningful thing. And I'm wondering if you can take us into, I mean, what was that really like? What was it like coming from the world of Wall Street and tech into this world? Do you feel like you say that it all led up to it, but what were the main parts of it that shaped your direction and everything that you ended up doing?
The thing is that my career in business and on Wall Street was possibly different from other people's careers. One thing is I always did a ton of writing, even in those careers. Like when I was on the boards of companies, I would help them write their press releases. When I worked for a telecom company, I wrote the press releases, I wrote the annual report, I wrote everything. So I was a business strategist, but I was also like the in-house writer because writing has always come very naturally to me. The other thing is that I I I never did anything that I wasn't proud of,
Mhm.
and that's unusual when you are
Yeah.
on Wall Street or in business. I just put my foot down and I said I will never do anything that I wouldn't want to put in writing. And that got me fired from a couple of boards.
Wow.
Where I was just like, we are not doing that. That is stupid. That is not good for shareholders. We are not doing that. And then I would be like asked not to run for reelection the next time that the annual meeting was coming up.
Yeah.
And that's fine because I wasn't going to do things that I didn't believe in. And I
Hmm.
always said on like every board I was on, I said, we can never do anything that we wouldn't put in a letter to shareholders and be proud of. Like, so if you keep your ethics during 30 years in business,
Yeah.
you don't come into Chicken Soup for the Soul somehow all messed up. Like I was already there. I was already
Yeah.
in that sweet spot of doing
Yeah.
the right thing, not making, I don't know, moral compromises. I
Yeah.
never
If it,
I never had to make a moral compromise. If that situation was on the horizon, I would either leave or they would tell me to leave. But
yeah.
I never did anything like that. So that helped a lot. I mean, it was scary. It was scary when I started because I didn't really know anything about publishing. It would be like running a restaurant and saying, well, I like food. I like reading books, but I didn't know how to make them. But luckily, there were a couple of people who came on board from the prior company, the original Chicken Soup for the Soul. And they stayed and they are like my best friends now. And they
Oh,
taught me everything. And they were already working remotely. This was back when there was no such thing as remote work, but they were in
yeah.
California. I'm in Connecticut. They stayed working from their homes in California. And they took me by the hand and helped me to become the publisher and editor in chief. So it wasn't that hard really to do it, although I have to say I've gotten better and better at it. And now I have a really great team around me. Very small group of us. There's only 5 full-time employees in my little
Oh,
group, and
wow.
then we have some outside freelancers who help a little bit. But really, the work is done by the contributors who write the 101
Yeah.
stories that we choose. Now, I do a lot of editing. Some people's stories come in almost perfect, and some people's stories come in needing a lot of editing. It depends. But, they come in with great plots, and then I can
Yeah.
make them good pieces of writing.
How quickly do you usually know, okay, this is a story that we want? This is a
Oh,
story that will go into the book.
I mean, I just I just, before I started talking to you, I just finished like an intense 5 or 6 days of reading 500 or 600 single-spaced pages of like
Wow.
semifinalists for a book that we're putting out in, I think we're putting it out in January, and it's called Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. And so I just went through all of those submissions. So we have a team of graders who read them, and then the best ones are given to me, and then I spend a week, intensely reading them. And I just chose 103 candidates for our book, which will have 101 stories.
Oh,
And yeah, I know pretty quickly when I read a story if we're going to use it or not. I basically spend the time reading it to make sure that it's true and to decide, like, what chapter would this go in? Like, what topic within our overall topic would this work for? And these days also I have to watch out for AI because people
yeah.
submit stuff. It's mainly men who do it. I haven't seen any women do it, to be honest. I've only seen men do it. And we get a lot of submissions from men. We love getting submissions from men because a lot of men read our books. But for some reason, it says all over our website, no AI. Do not use
Yeah.
AI. It sucks. Like, we can
Yeah.
tell if you used AI. It creates this flowery garbage. We're
Yeah.
not gonna publish, like, AI makes the worst stuff. It's so flowery. It puts in like tons of unnecessary adjectives and adverbs, and it does the worst possible things. It's just awful. It
I
practically
agree. It says
smells.
so much without saying anything.
Yeah, it's like devoid of anything, and it's just, oh, it's horrible. So when I see one that I think is I copy and paste it into one of those AI detectors, and it will come back like 100% AI or 82% AI. We did get one from a guy who's written for us before, and he's a really good writer. But I looked at it, I'm like, this is garbage. How did this guy submit something to us that was garbage? And so, and I ran it through the AI detector, and it said it was 38%. I'm like, this guy is a good writer. This is a
Yeah.
very good professional writer who's won awards. Like, he's an established author.
Yeah.
And so we got in touch with him, and he said, I don't use AI. I'm very opposed to AI. And we said, well, there's AI. Your piece is infested with AI. He said, well, I used a copy editor because I had so much going on in my life that I just gave her everything. I'm like, just give it one last pass for me because this guy is so busy. Well, this editor charged him for editing, and all that he or she did was run it through some garbage AI thing
No.
and ruined his story. So he
Yeah.
was like, thank you so much for telling me. I have to go now and check everything this person ever did for me. Because now he has all his work from I don't know how much. I mean, that story was probably submitted to us 6 to 12 months ago. So I don't know how
Yeah.
long his stuff has been infested. But anyway, we can tell. So don't bother. Anybody
Yeah.
out there, do not bother to
This
send
is
us
so
AI.
huge. I'm on this same situation with AI being used for like captions of things and content being created around it as well. It's like something about this is not resonant. Something about this doesn't have any energy or feeling behind it. And I wanted to ask you what the best stories, because I'm sure there's ones that you read it and you're like, okay, I'm kind of on the fence, like this could be good. We'll see if there's space for it, if where I would put it, etc. And then there are ones that I imagine you read and you're like, yes,
Yeah.
this one. What do
Yeah.
those stories have?
Well, they make me feel something.
Yeah.
They they provide either a laugh, because we do a lot of humorous books also. Like, we do books that are
Mm-hmm.
just humorous stories or just funny stories about families, or dog and cat stories. So most of our books are actually, I mean, I've changed the direction of Chicken Soup for the Soul to not be so much self-help, not so serious.
Yeah.
But like, I would say half our books are just super entertaining. And then maybe a quarter of our books are more spiritual, like about miracles and angels and messages from heaven. And then a quarter are what you would consider traditional self-help. When I read a story, I think, does it make me feel something? Does it, if it's a self-help topic, does it provide good advice that I would
Mm-hmm.
follow if I wasn't already doing what they're talking about, because I've been exposed to tens of thousands of stories. So
Yes.
I've already picked up all of these good traits, but still I'll see something new. I'm like, oh, like today, okay, I was reading stories for this Change Your Habits, Change Your Life book. And this guy wrote in that he was recently retired and he was working on like to-do lists. And this was the first time I ever saw anybody say this. And he said, wait a minute, why do I have a to-do list? Why don't I have a to enjoy list? And he was like,
Yes.
get rid of those to-do lists. I'm just going to make a list of all the things I'm going to enjoy. And I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. That story is definitely getting in. And I could see myself doing that too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
why do you always have to have it? Like people retire and then they're like, I'm so busy. I organized all the
Yeah.
photos. I cleaned out the basement. I did all these projects. They have all these projects. I'm like, did you sit in a chair on your porch and put your feet up and listen to the birds?
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to that yet. But this guy made a really good point. Like, how about having a to enjoy list? It's a great idea.
Yes. It is a great idea. It's true. I mean, if we keep putting the things that we're going to enjoy after the to-do list, then we never get to them anyway. So maybe if we can get to our to enjoy list first, we will have a better attitude and a more efficient, working on our actual to-do list. I don't know.
Or just forget the to-do list, and just do the to enjoy list. I
Yeah.
mean, but see that now that worked in my brain, the to enjoy
Yeah.
list. Somebody else might need I need to make an hour of me time a day. Like that might be the
Hmm.
advice that works for them,
Yep.
like it hits people in different ways, which is why we put 101 stories together and then something in there will change your life. And I talk to my team all the time about how we have changed so much because of reading these stories, because we've
I
all read
imagine.
tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 stories. I mean, we've published in the company's history, I counted it up a few months ago, we've published 27,000 individual stories.
Wow.
And those are all chosen, so that's a lot of
Yeah.
stories. But on the way to publishing 27,000, like my team who reads all the submissions, they've probably read, 500,000 stories to get to
Yep.
the 27,000 that we've published.
Do you ever feel overwhelmed, like the self-help overwhelm or the advice overwhelm from reading all of that? Or
Now,
because I understand that we have to have so many different takes and different ideas to find out what works for you, because that's key, right? Not everybody needs the same advice, but sometimes I feel like there's so many things I want to do, and there's only a certain amount of time in the day and a certain number of slots for these, self-help sort of habits. But yeah, I'm curious if do you ever feel that overwhelm, or you just feel decisive, like, oh no, this is for me, this is not for me?
yeah, I just feel like I choose the ones that I want. For example, I would say that the number one key to happiness is the ability to count your blessings, use that power of gratitude.
Yeah.
So we have published hundreds, maybe even more than 1,000 stories from people who changed their lives by making gratitude lists or writing down 3 things a day they were thankful for, or writing something down and putting it in a jar and then reading it a month later or at Christmas or whatever. So all these people write down what they're grateful for in some manner. And so many of them report that it's life-changing. I mean, incredibly life-changing. Like they turned from, glasses half empty people to glasses half full people in like 10 days, or
Yeah.
14 days. Just the act of knowing
That's
every day,
everything.
like
Yeah.
I have to write 3 things down tonight before I go to bed, or I have to write 5 things down. And it can't be anything else that I've already written down. So then they spend the whole day being like, oh, I chose the right line at the bank, or, oh, that driver, waved me through. That was so nice. Or
Yeah.
something more significant, like I ran into that old friend and we arranged to have lunch. Whatever it is, they write down what they're grateful for. So that will never work for me because I'm already like basically a grateful person. And I always see the silver linings in everything. And so I don't need that. But I know it's incredibly helpful to other people. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't have to do all of that. But where I was very affected was what I believe is the second most important key to happiness, and that is to use the power of forgiveness. And that has had a huge impact on my life and has made me so much happier. And I have read fabulous stories, that went right into my brain and changed me as a
Mm.
person. And I tell them to people all the time. So for me, the forgiveness stuff was life changing. So it just depends on the person. I changed my life with that stuff. Other people change their life with the gratitude stuff. I mean, we're all different. So we offer it all up to our readers and they can choose what they need and what works for them. But I can guarantee that their lives will be changed.
Has there ever been a story that you decided to pass on, but then you just couldn't stop thinking about it and you actually went back to it and ended up including it?
I'm trying to think if that ever happened. I don't know. I move so fast. I mean, there have been stories that we didn't take, and the person will keep submitting the story, being like, I know
Yeah.
this is a good story, and you guys keep not taking it. And then
Yeah.
I'll look at it one day, I'll be like, this is a really good story. What were we thinking? And I'll publish it. So that will happen. And so we say to
Yeah.
people, if you are sure that your story is really good, just keep submitting it. Because we'll always do
Yeah.
another book on that same topic. And we don't mind if they keep trying. Because also what happens is that we get tired.
Hmm.
You read like the same stuff over and over again, no matter how great it is. If you already read 5 great stories about forgiveness and you already have filled up your book with that
Yep.
topic, but then you might need one, or maybe somebody submitted late, like right before our deadline. And so we got bored by the time we got to the deadline. And then
Yeah.
the next time they submitted early when we're fresh, I
Yeah.
sometimes say it's like college admissions where,
Yeah.
some of these college admissions counselors say, like, we accepted 500 kids, but honestly, we could have thrown away those 500 and taken the next 500 and had just as good a class.
Yep.
That can happen because we'll get 4,000, 5,000 submissions for a book that's going to have 101 stories in it. So that's why we say to people, just keep trying. If you're convinced it's really good, keep trying.
That's a beautiful reminder, honestly. And I think that just I can picture that in my mind. It's sometimes we give up on our work, even when we know that it's really good work. And it may just be that, okay, it hasn't been the right moment. I haven't submitted it at the right time with the other right group of stories to be included. And yeah, to keep doing that. That's really sweet and really special to think about, actually. Cool.
Yeah, we definitely encourage people. We've had people who've got in on their first try, and then we have people who say, I've been submitting for 4 years and I finally got in, and then I got 3 in a row in. So you just don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
it's not that hard to just go on our website, chickensoup.com, click on submit your story. You copy and paste it into this little box, and then you don't even have to think about it. And then
Yeah.
you may or may not hear from us. But,
Yeah.
and it might take a year to hear from us.
You
That's
submit it
possible.
multiple times, and then eventually somebody's like, this feels oddly familiar, and I really like it.
Or,
Yeah.
it could just be like we already picked 5 stories with that exact same advice in them. And then the next time you're lucky enough to be the 3rd story we read with that kind of advice. And so you make it, and your story is just as good both times.
Totally. What kind of stories do you think the world needs the most right now?
Oh my gosh, it's what a tough time with all the divisiveness and everything. It's just so hard right now. I think the forgiveness stories are really important. We just put out a book August 19th called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Let It Go. And that book is all about using the power of forgiveness, putting the past in the past where it belongs, recognizing that everybody's doing the best that they can, even if you think they're terrible at it. They are doing the best that they can, and you do the best that you can, even if
Yeah.
what you do isn't always satisfactory to other people. You tried. I mean, a big part of forgiveness is understanding that the other person who you might be angry at is actually doing the best that they can. And
Yeah.
if you know they tried, then it's a lot harder to be angry. If somebody tries really hard and they're just not good at it, you're going to be mad at them. Like
Yeah.
they tried, and you can't take it personally. And I don't know. I remember after the 2016 election, I didn't really know what my friend, what my family members had done. And then I was at a wedding and discovered that, some family members who I really love had voted differently than I voted. And I had wondered, like, how am I going to react? And
Yeah.
then when I heard who they'd voted for, I realized, okay, I still love them. And that was a relief that it
Yeah.
didn't cause family friction, and I could move on. So I really think I've learned a lot of this, from working on these Chicken Soup for the Soul books. But yeah, that helped a lot. I don't even know how I got on this topic. How did I get on this topic with you?
What the world needs
Oh,
most right
yeah,
now
yeah.
in terms of
Forgiveness.
stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Okay, forgiveness is super important. So, like, here's a few examples. I was driving down the highway, I guess it was last summer, and I'm in the middle lane. No, I'm in the right lane because I was with my brother who likes to drive slowly. So I'm in the right lane, driving the speed limit like a good girl. And this truck that was in the middle lane, of 3 lanes, all of a sudden it just veers right in front of me and goes to an exit.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do. He ran me off the road. Luckily, the exit had like a shoulder. So this guy veers off the road. All I can do is turn right abruptly and screech off the road also. That was the only way I could avoid being hit. So I'm going down the shoulder of the exit ramp. He's in the normal 1 lane exit ramp. And then at the bottom, I pulled in behind him at the traffic light. And I'm like, oh, phew, like we could have been killed. And then I looked, it was this ramshackle truck. I mean, falling apart truck, no side view mirrors.
Oh,
And the truck was 100% packed with somebody's personal possessions and not even had any rear doors. Clearly, there was no ability to look out a rear view mirror because this was packed from floor to ceiling with what was clearly their possessions. And then I thought to myself, oh, this person's having a really bad day because somehow, for some reason, in this ramshackle truck, which is falling apart, this person has all of their personal possessions in this truck, and I don't know where they're going. And did they just get evicted? And I was like, well, they're having a really bad day, and I'm not mad at them. And that was it. Like, I never got mad. I just felt sympathy for them because they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't
yeah.
run me off the road on purpose. You
Yeah.
know, so that's what I call pre-forgiveness, where you don't even ever get mad.
Mm.
So there's nothing to forgive because you never got mad in the first place. But then other types of forgiveness, I read this amazing story from this woman who was just stuck in her divorce resentment for years. And then she went to this divorce support group. Now her ex-husband had already moved on, was in a new relationship, new home, like happy. And she was just stuck, still fuming. She goes to this divorce support group, and the leader said to everybody in the support group, repeat after me. In my marriage, I did the best that I could. So they all happily said, in my marriage, I did the best that I could. And then the leader said, okay, now say, in my marriage, my spouse did the best that he or she could. And nobody would say it. And
Yeah.
the leader said to them, you did the best that you could. Why don't you think that your ex did the best that he or she could, even if, he or she totally let you down and did a terrible job? And it just, it was,
It clicked for her.
it totally clicked. And she was like, oh my God, my ex-husband was terrible at being married to me, but he did the best that he could, just like I did the best that I could. She immediately stopped being mad after years of
Yeah.
resentment. She was free and she just
Yeah.
moved forward. I say that like lack of forgiveness is like you have this cloak that you're wearing. You're wearing this cloak and you've like sewn onto it like little bits of metal for every resentment and disappointment and hurt in your life. And now you're
Yeah.
wearing this heavy cloak and you're dragging all of this stuff behind you because it is from your past. And you're like, wait a minute, why am I dragging this cloak behind me with all this stuff on it? And you kind of open it up and you shrug it off and you leave it on the ground behind you. And now you are like 30 pounds lighter and you move forward free. And that's what forgiveness does for you. It just gives you that freedom to move forward. And yeah, that stuff happened in the past, but you don't have to keep reliving those negative emotions. And you never even have to tell the person you're forgiving that you forgave them. It's just between you and yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what we need the most right now in this world is forgiveness.
Yeah, we need to lighten up that heavy load. I like that visualization of the heavy cloak with things sewn onto it and what happens. We think it's like an excruciating process to, it's impossible. I could never set down the cloak. But then, like you say, you read something or you hear something, and then finally you realize all along I've been able to take this thing off,
And you
so
know
why
what?
haven't I?
You don't have to forgive the person. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what the person did was okay.
Yeah, that you justify it.
You're not
Yeah.
telling them what you did was okay. You're just saying to yourself, okay, that bad thing happened. I'm never going to see that person again. You could say that, but I won't relive those emotions because it's the reliving of the emotions that's the weight. That other person doesn't even know how much you're suffering from what they did to you. Why are you
Yeah.
even letting them in your head, occupying that space
Yeah.
in your head? Like, kick them out.
What do you think really happens when we read a story that we so connect with that kind of sets us free? Do you think it's because we are able to feel the emotions, we're able to see it through new eyes? Like what really goes on? Because, and I don't think there's any right answer, but I'm just curious in your mind, what's happening with this because the stories are changing us.
You know what? It's exciting. When you read a
Mm.
story that resonates with you and gives you this great idea, you're like, wow, I could do that. Wow, that would really make a difference. Wow, that would make me happier. And then it's exciting because you're like, I have this tool. Like you have a toolkit, for your life. And all of a sudden you got this amazing new handy tool. You're like, this is great. I'm putting this in my toolkit. I'm going to start using this right away and see what happens. So I think it's really exciting when I find a story myself that makes a difference to me.
I think that this sense of excitement that you're speaking to is everything because it's sort of the energy to do something
You're
for the
right,
first
because the
time,
excitement
perhaps.
gives you the fuel to go ahead
Yes.
and try this new
Mm.
idea. And that is exciting because when that story resonates with you and you say, wow, that really worked for that man or that woman or that kid, and then you're like, that could work for me. You see all these possibilities. It's totally empowering and energizing and
Yeah.
exciting that you're going to be able to do this too, because you already
Yeah.
have this real life example from this very relatable person for whom it did work.
When you are doing your podcast, I believe if I saw right, you have over like 1,000 episodes,
I do.
and you often tell a couple of the stories in each episode, right?
I do. So I have this podcast. It's called the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast, and it's on all the normal podcast platforms. I think. I'm not sure. I have to make sure actually, because my podcast producer disappeared a few years ago, and I never really checked to make sure that my new people are putting it on all the different platforms that it should go on. But I think it's everywhere. I know it's on Apple and Google and all
I
the
saw it.
normal
Yeah, yeah,
ones.
on Spotify too.
Spotify. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what I do is I do 3 a week, and I will go through our books and I'll pair stories. So I'll be like, let me do a couple about whatever, and I'll go find a couple from a new book and be like, these two go together. And then I don't read the stories. I just talk about the stories and we'll quote I'll quote from the stories. I just try to give people like a quickie look at the stories and what the lessons are from those stories, or if it's one of our humor books, just what was funny about those stories. If it's a Christmas book, those are very entertaining also. But anyway, I just give the essence of the stories, quote a little bit from those writers. It's a nice way to be exposed to Chicken Soup for the Soul in, while you're like roaming about, so we do that. We also have a newsletter that people can sign up for where you can get as many as 11 free Chicken Soup for the Soul stories a week in your email. There's a daily story where you get 7 stories a week, or there's a weekly, or there's like specific topics. We do also like we have busy moms, we have cancer, we have like a spirituality one, we have a pets one. And I think there's one more, but now I can't remember it off the top of my head while we're talking. But anyway, yeah, you could get free Chicken Soup for the Soul stories in your email also. So that's kind of fun. And we hope, of course, it will lead to people buying the books. But in the meanwhile, they can sample the stories on the podcast or sample them in our free story newsletters.
You've been super consistent with, to produce that first of all, I mean, that many books and such a small team and that many podcast episodes. It's impressive to me because I also know I'm doing that. I've been, I think, almost like coming up on 3 years that I've been podcasting one episode per week, but still it's like, wow, that's a lot. And I was curious, what has all of this taught you about, I think consistency would be the question that I would ask you here, because of course you could say a lot of other words like resilience and, finding ways to keep yourself inspired and motivated to continue to share all of these stories with people because it takes work. I mean, the stories can be incredibly inspiring, but it's like you said, you have to read hundreds and hundreds of stories. But yeah, what are your thoughts on consistency, especially in this sort of creative work?
Yeah, I've always been a really hard worker and just able to like shoulder a lot of work and to multitask. And I actually wear two different hats at Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm the publisher and I'm the editor in chief, and those are really two different jobs. So I do both of those jobs, and I know it's insane. Like my kids are like, "Why are you still doing this?" And my son says, "Like, why are you still doing the podcast?" I'm like, "Well, because it's good," and but I know it is kind of insane how much I work. And also, I've had cancer for the last 7 years. So I have done all of this while going through lots of chemo, all kinds of, just all kinds of like really difficult times. Like I'm going through chemo right now, 6 months of chemo right now. And this is my fourth time going through a money month period of chemo,
Yeah.
I just keep doing it. I don't know. I think I'm crazy. Like I'm 68. All my friends are retired from their jobs now, and I'm still working more than full time. It is kind of crazy. Although now I'm working really hard to go on vacations and to take like lots of meaningful vacations because I also have 6 grandchildren with
Oh, wow.
another one very close to being born this fall, and so I'll have 7 grandchildren, and they're all scattered about. Like nobody lives near me. So I'm
Yeah.
constantly traveling to visit children and grandchildren. And then my husband and I try to go on a lot of vacations also. So when we're not working nonstop, we're trying to vacation or travel nonstop. So we're extremely busy people.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, you're super strong, and I'm rooting for more vacations for you. That sounds wonderful. And all the grandchildren, I'm sure they bring so much joy. Is there a story from your own life that you've included in any of the books?
Oh my gosh, dozens of them. I've
Okay.
included so many. I'm trying to think about well, I did write up that story about the person who drove me off the road, who forced me off the road,
Yeah.
and how I discovered to my surprise that I wasn't angry, but just sympathetic. So that was one that I wrote. Oh, I wrote another one. This was cool. This was another one I wrote last year. It was about positive thinking. We're in the process of getting rid of this stupid Tesla that we have, which I hate having this car. But we've had it for 6 years, and it keeps getting flat tires, and it has no spare. And then there's no
Oh no.
there's no Tesla service when we get a spare, and we can be stuck on the side of the road for hours. So we were on our way to the city, to New York City, for a Broadway play, a big deal, front row seats. It was limited run, all about Putin and the oligarchs. I was so excited about it. We get a flat tire on the highway heading into New York City. We're with another couple. So we pull off to the side of the road. It's raining. We've got this flat, like we're stuck. And I said to our friends, I wish I could just get an Uber to show up right now and pick us up and take us into the city. And it was like 5 seconds later, a Toyota Camry with New York like TLC plates, taxi and limousine commission plates, pulls up in front of us. And I'm like, that's an Uber. It's a Toyota Camry. Camry has TLC plates. That has to be an Uber because they're all like that. And I run out in the rain. I go to the guy like, are you an Uber? He said, yes. I said, if I give you $100, will you drive us into the city? He said, yes, I will. I'm like, thank you. So the wife and I of the couple, she and I went into the city and used 2 of the tickets that we had. The husband stayed with the car for hours and had to get
Oh no.
towed twice by 2 more. Like they missed everything.
Oh no.
But like that was a great example of like positive thinking and manifesting an Uber on a
Yeah,
busy
ask
highway
and you
in
shall
in
receive.
like the Bronx. It was so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Oh, I love things like that. I love things like that where it's like, wouldn't it be nice if this could happen?
And
And then
then,
it's just bam, there it
yeah,
is.
we do a lot of books about miracles and angels and
I
all the
love
spiritual stuff,
miracles.
but I'm not actually a religious person. And so
Yeah.
I put tons of stories in those books about just like cool coincidences,
Yeah.
like when really
Yeah.
great things happen to people, because I love those as well.
Synchronicity stories are my favorite stories.
We
I
get a
keep a
lot.
running list of like green light, just crazy, like you cannot believe that this happened,
Yes.
sort of stories, even if they're small. Because then you go back through and you're like, oh my gosh, cool things have been happening in my life. That's amazing, right?
We had a story from a woman who always suspected that she didn't fit with her family. And her best friend said to her, I think you're adopted. And she said, but nobody ever told me I was adopted. But then her parents died, so she never found out. And then she and her friend, totally randomly, last minute, took a vacation, flew from like Baltimore to St. Thomas. It was totally random. Didn't like the beach at the hotel that they were at in St. Thomas. So one day, randomly, get in a taxi and go across the island to another hotel that supposedly has a better beach, go into this empty restaurant for breakfast. And then for some reason, the hostess seats them and then brings another two ladies in this completely empty restaurant and puts the two ladies right next to them, where you could talk to the people right next to you. And then they start chatting and they chat for an hour. And then the conversation goes here and there. And without like giving you all the boring details, the woman realizes that she's talking to her biological sister, who's from St.
Crazy.
Croix, and
Yeah.
and she was adopted, and this is her sister, and she gets the whole story about why she was adopted by this couple in Washington D.C. And then she flies to St. Croix that very day and meets her whole family.
Oh
Her
my gosh.
biological parents were gone, but she met all her full brothers and sisters. Discovered that the sister, who she randomly met in this restaurant, sent out the same Christmas card that year. Now there's like thousands of Christmas cards you could send. They sent out the
Yeah.
same one,
The
had
same one.
had like the same picture of something hanging on their walls, like they were very much the same.
Connected. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, it was so cool. So we get really cool coincidence stories like that.
I love stories like that. I think those are some of the most special because they remind us that anything can happen and miracles are inevitable, which is one of my favorite sayings, I think, of all time.
We put
That's
out a
really,
book
really
about
cool.
miracles every single year, filled with
I
stories
have
like that.
I have to ask for all the yogis and yoga teachers listening to this podcast, do you think you guys will ever do one related to yoga? A
Probably
book?
not alone because there wouldn't be enough variety with 101 stories, but we have yoga in all our books. We
Yeah, I
constantly
imagine.
have yoga. And I have to say, it was so funny, but there was a time, like years ago, we would get complaint letters that we had gay couples in our books. And then people got
Wow.
over that. And then we started getting complaint letters that we had yoga in our books. People were
What?
like, "Don't you know that that's not Christian?" And and I was thinking, well, this is not a Christian publishing company at all.
Yeah.
Like this is a very secular publishing company, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with yoga just because people say namaste. And so, but we were getting protest letters for a while about yoga. Isn't that
Because of
funny?
yoga,
But anyway,
protesting the yoga.
we have yoga in all our books.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine as well. Also, so many people these days are practicing yoga. It's amazing. I'm sure lots of the people who write in are also just yogis in general, and you may not even know it.
Yeah, because it's just another form of exercise and contemplation and getting your head together. Like I don't do yoga because I'm unbelievably inflexible and even stretch classes like as much as I could handle. But I
Yeah.
do appreciate yoga for people who are not mutants like me who can't bend anything.
Well, and the greatest yoga is the way of being, honestly, beyond the physical practice. So you can tell in just your attitude and your energy and all of that that you've got very yogic qualities in that sense. So it doesn't have to be the physical practice anyways of the yoga. But so on the podcast I always like to ask people as well because it's about leadership as well. I want to ask what are exceptional qualities of a leader in your opinion, just what makes a really good leader?
Uh, well, I think a leader has to be nice. I don't believe that leaders should be hard-nosed and jerks, and that makes them good leaders. That doesn't make them good leaders at all. They should be nice. They should understand their people. They should understand that their people are doing their best. They should pitch in and do stuff with their people. I mean, the best way to lead is do the stuff with the people so that you're showing that you're not above it all. Have a vision and communicate that vision to the people who work with you so that they can get excited about that vision also. Listen to your people. Even if you're going to end up being like the person who wins the argument, you should still listen. I always listen because I learn a lot. It was interesting when we took over the company and, I hired these two longtime people who knew what they were doing. They said to me that one of the things they really enjoyed about me coming on board as their new boss was that I didn't come in intending to change anything right off the bat. I listened, I contemplated, and it took us years to make various changes because basically I assumed first that that the old company knew what it was doing before I would then be like, okay, well, you know what? Technology has changed, so maybe we'll do it differently now. But it's basically just don't be an ass,
Yeah. Yeah. Fair. I like this idea too of listening and not assuming fault in the other person, or not assuming that, okay, my way is ultimately better because it's the way that I want to do it. Maybe there's actually great value to be found in listening first before stating what you want people to do necessarily.
Oh my gosh, you see people who work at companies who are so frustrated because their bosses won't listen to them. And these people are in the trenches and they know a better way to do what it is that they do every single day, right? And their bosses don't know. So they're not in the trenches. So you should always listen to the people who are in the trenches.
Absolutely. So we're almost at the end of the episode here. So I have two little kind of rapid fire, shorter questions for you. And then we have the final billboard question. But the first question I want to ask is, what's your greatest joy?
It's my children and grandchildren.
Yeah. If someone is listening and wants to write a story but doesn't know if theirs is good enough, what would you tell them?
Oh my gosh, if you have a good plot, a good message, don't worry if you're not the world's greatest writer because I will fix it. I'm happy to fix it. If there's a good story in there, I will bring that story out. Think of it as like a sculpture. You know how the sculptors say like there's a big piece of rock and then they take off what isn't necessary and then they get so if you give me a story that's not well written, that needs a lot of editing, I will fix it for you. If it's a great story, do send it in. You go to chickensoup.com, you click on submit your story, then read everything that we tell you there. Follow our instructions, and it works really well.
Is there any question that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you?
No, because I've been doing this 18 years. There's probably 25 hours worth of stuff we could have talked about.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so this is the billboard question, then this will be the last question of the interview. And it's that if you had a billboard that was going to be seen by everybody in the world, what would you put on the billboard? So this can be a phrase that you think is important, a quote that you live by. It can be anything that you want it to be, but what would you put on the billboard? No pressure.
I know. And I'm thinking if it's a billboard, it's kind of where people are driving. So I'm thinking about driving, And so I'm thinking, I don't know, people get so mean when they're driving. I think I would be more focused on, I have so many good messages I could convey in a billboard, but I might as well do one that has to do with driving. So I would probably put up a billboard that said something like, are you doing the best that you can? Instead of getting mad, remember the rest of us are doing the best we can too. I would probably say something like that.
That's nice. You know what's crazy is I don't think I've ever seen a billboard like that.
No, because people have to pay a lot of money for those. It's the only billboards that I have ever seen that are trying to like dispense advice are religious ones.
Yes.
From people proselytizing.
Yes.
But I don't think I mean, it's expensive to put up a billboard, so nobody's going to put up a
Just
billboard
because,
just to
yeah.
be nice, you know?
Yeah. One of these days on the podcast, I'm going to have a billboard budget and just change it weekly, each guest. I think that would be wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amy. This was really fun to hear from you and great insight as well. I feel like, a lot of us are really into writing, especially on this podcast. We talk a lot about creativity. So I hope that people, if you're listening, I hope that you submit a story if you're on the edge. And I guess where can people find your podcast and where can people buy the books? Is there anything that you want to direct us to?
Yeah, so for the podcast, hopefully it's on whatever platform you already listen to. We don't have it on YouTube, so it's just, audio.
Okay.
And for buying the books, Walmart carries all our books, as they come out. Kroger, Mayors, Fred Meyer, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, independent bookstores sometimes do, but they don't carry all of them, And then, of course, there's Amazon, bn.com, walmart.com. If you're in Canada, Chapters Indigo, Walmart in Canada also. And the books are pretty much readily available, and they're really well priced too. Like, we have always made this commitment to charge less for our books than other publishers charge for books of the same size. So they're always
Yeah.
a good deal.
Yeah. No, I've noticed that as well. Well, I hope that someday, by way of a miracle or a crazy synchronicity, our paths will cross in person. But it was so nice to chat with you virtually today. And if you're listening, thanks as well for making it all the way to the end of the episode.
Thank you so much, Shauna. It was really fun. You asked great questions.